Chapter 11. But to Jean the incident had closed with his payment of the money, and handing Cosette a new black satchel, he tells her, "You will find some clothes in this. Put them on and we'll be going." Only too eager to get away from this terrible place and these horrible people, she takes it into her crowded quarters under the stair and with trembling hands lifts out a child's woolen dress, petticoat, and stockings, shoes, and hat, all black. Jean had bought them in a Paris store for a little girl some 8 years old and insisted that they must be black since her mother was dead. He was sure no other color would do. Cosette quickly puts them on. They fit her fairly well, and soon you might have seen the two walking hurriedly along the wood path past the spring. He with empty satchel over his shoulder, while his great right hand clasps gently the little girl's tiny left, as her other arm holds close to her heart her first real doll, arrayed in gorgeous robes of many-colored silk. Jean's face is aglow with a light that seems strangely out of keeping with features so rugged and stern. They reach the highway in time to catch the early morning stage into the city, and once in the suburbs are delivered at the door of a dilapidated old building, called by the neighbors the Garbon Hovel. Up the rickety stairs they climb to 3 comfortable furnished rooms, which for the present he calls home. It is heaven for Cosette, which is with its wholesome food, brand new clothes, no work to do, a beautiful doll to play with, and someone to love her and kiss her good night. Good things far beyond her brightest dreams. And it is like heaven to Jean, too, for all the pent-up streams of affection in his great heart of love, dammed back through these years by the cruelty of men, now finds an open gateway and flows out like a resistless river into the life of this little child. Often at night, as she lies sleeping in her cot, Jean steals into her room, candle in hand, to gaze lovingly upon her face as he whispers to himself, "Isn't she a beauty? And she's all my own, my very own, and no one will ever take her away from me." He never goes outside the door during the day, for he's afraid Javert might be watching for the escaped convict. But when twilight is deepening, he suggests, "Come along, Cosette. We haven't had a walk all day." Then, hand in hand, they wander out toward the country and back again. One evening, as they pass an old well, a beggar sitting on the curbstone with cowl on his head and faded cloak over his shoulders holds out his hand for alms. Jean, who could never look unmoved on want, drops a franc in the open palm. Of course, the beggar is there next and every evening, until one night, as the coin touches his open hand, he suddenly lifts his face as if to see his benefactor. The cowl falls off, and Jean looks down into the hard face of his old enemy, Inspector Javert. Each knows the other, while hoping that the recognition is not mutual. It seems that Javert, now an inspector on the Paris police force, had noticed a local item in the press, telling about an old man going out to Montfermeil and taking from the Fernanders a little maid named Cosette. These names, to Javert's retentive memory, were connected with the strange history of the former mayor of M-sur-M, who was sent down for life to the convict prison in Toulon and afterward reported drowned. The detective instinct in Javert was suddenly awake, and he made a special journey out to this village to investigate. His inquiries there revealed the fact that the parties directly concerned in the report corresponded exactly with the persons he had known. Returning to the city to search for further light on the problem, he came upon an old beggar sitting on the curb of a well, who readily told of a stout old man with white hair and bent shoulders passing this well each evening and leading by the hand a little girl dressed in black. Javert made haste, at the cost of 4 francs, to purchase the right to wear the beggar's cowl and cloak the next evening at this particular place. The meeting of the old-time foes followed as described. Jean, returning to his home that evening, is greatly troubled lest his old enemy may have recognized him at the well, for the coming of Fantine's child into his life had added much to his longing to retain his freedom. A sleepless night spent thinking carefully over the incident convinces him that no time should be lost in changing his place of abode. Next day he settles with his landlady, makes plans for quietly altering his address, waits until it is fully dark, and then suggests to Cosette their evening walk together, with the added advice that she bring her cherished doll with her, as they may not return to this present lodgings. Before venturing forth, he peers through a crevice in the door, little dreaming that Javert's lynx-like eyes from behind a big tree in the park are watching that very door. Once outside, he looks in all directions and, seeing no one, faces toward the outskirts of the city, keeping as far as possible to the darker side of the streets. Every few steps, he turns to look back, but observes no sign of being followed, until, having crossed a bridge, a glance behind reveals, hurrying across, 3 guardsmen, and the central one of whom he recognizes Javert's well-known form. Now he knows the pursuit is on, and snatching up into his arms Cosette and her doll, he rushes furiously on through back streets and lanes, eager to reach the country with its many dark hiding places that promise security. Passing a corner, he notices a guardsman standing by a lamp-post a block away, and in the opposite direction another, and is convinced that Javert has taken the precaution of throwing around him a cordon of guardsmen. His only hope now lies in reaching the open country with its unlighted roads and paths, so he still hurries forward until he finds himself in a blind alley, facing a high stone wall that seems impossible to scale. What shall he do? To turn back is to fall into the hands of his pursuers. Now he remembers his old-time skill in climbing the angle of the convict prison wall and decides he can do it again. Snatching off his cravat, he ties it around the waist of Cosette, and fastening to it a strong cord from his pocket, he mounts the wall and pulls her after. In almost less time than it takes to tell it, they are out of sight on a sloping roof, and none too soon, for Javert, halted by the wall, is heard cursing his men for letting the fugitive escape. One protests, "He did not come my way, sir." "Nor mine," asserts another. "You needn't lie to me," snarls the thwarted officer. "I planted a man at every street corner. Do you mean to tell me he could climb this wall and get away? He could just as easily fly to heaven." But Javert is mistaken this time, and when he leads his men away, Jean, with Cosette in his arms, slides down the roof slope to its edge not far above the ground. Leaping to earth, he begins at once to seek for some place of shelter for the frightened child. He is not long in discovering that they are in a large garden. His attention is arrested by the tinkling of a bell as a man, lantern in hand, comes limping toward them along one of the garden paths. It turns out to be the lame old gardener, Father Fauchelevent, for whom Jean, then known only as Mère Madeleine, secured this very position of convent gardener long years ago, and who is now out to cover some flowers for fear of frost. The rule of the convent requires him always to wear a bell at his knees, so that he, the only man allowed around the place, might duly announce his approach to the timid sisters. With Cosette still in his arms, Jean awaits the old gardener's arrival, who, startled at the unexpected presence of a strange man in this forbidden place, lifts his lantern, and, as soon as his amazement can find words, exclaims, "Mère Madeleine, how did you get in here? Did you climb over the wall, or did you fall down from heaven? What did you come for, anyway? I haven't forgotten that you saved my life, and that every comfort I have had these years I owe to you, sir." When the astonished old man stops for breath, Jean gently replies, "If ever I did anything for you, Father Fauchelevent, you can pay it all back tonight by asking no more questions and finding some place for this child to sleep. I'll do anything in the world for you, Mère Madeleine. Just come with me." And old Father Fauchelevent leads them to his own ivy-covered cottage, puts the tired, sleepy child into his own cot, while the 2 old men sleep as best they can on bench or floor. Nor is it the first time they've occupied so hard a bed. Next morning, Father Fauchelevent warns his honored guest not to appear outside the cottage door, lest one of the sisters should report a strange man in the garden, when the guardsmen would be after him in half an hour. He, however, assures him, "I will put on my old attorney thinking cap and try to devise some safe way out." Sure enough, his thinking is to some purpose, for soon we find him at the convent's front wicket, talking to the lady superior, his form bent and wearing a strained look on his face, as of one suffering greatly. "Good sister," he is saying, "my rheumatism is getting so bad that I cannot stoop to work amongst the flowers and vegetables any longer, and will have to give up my position." "Why, Father Fauchelevent, I never saw you looking so ill. It must be very painful," was the kind sister's prompt reply. "Indeed, good sister, the suffering is terrible. But, Father Fauchelevent, I do not know any man in the world except for you, and have no idea whom we could get to take your place. Could you tell me of any suitable person?" "Well, good sister, I have a brother who isn't quite as old as I am, and much stronger, and he is used to this kind of work. Perhaps I might be able to get him. He could live with me in the cottage, and the expenses would not be great." "You might bring him to see me, and I will talk with him," she suggests. I need not describe the detail, the method, and various steps by which the supposed brother is brought to the convent wicket. It is enough to say that the Sister Superior is so favorably impressed by his appearance, voice, and conversation that she engages him at once as assistants to his brother. Father Fauchelevent, and in answer to his plea of responsibility for the little girl Cosette, placed in his care by an overruling providence, she offers to take her into the convent and teach her, even as she does the other girls. Still he hesitates, as with evident sincerity he protests that this child is all he has in the world, and life would have no joy for him if he could not see her often, until the good sister consents that Cosette shall spend 1 hour every day with her father in garden or cottage.